Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be an urban fantasy and paranormal romance recommendations video, and this is going to be structured around generally doctors and librarians. So it's been a while since I've done one of these and I was kind of like, I want something fun and hopefully shorter to film, so that's what we're going to do. So I have 4 different series to talk to you about today, and in general these are much newer than a lot of the other series that I've talked about in previous videos in this video series. Most of them are ongoing, so we have some fresh things to talk about here, I guess. So I think the first series that I'll talk about is the Greta Helsing series by Vivian, and the first book is Strange Practice. So this is actually one I think that's really good to read around Halloween. We follow Greta Helsing, who is a descendant of the Van Helsing, and she basically has inherited this medical practice from her family. So she treats the undead for things like vocal strain and banshees, arthritis and barrow wights, and entropy in mummies. So it's kind of hard for her to make a living doing this, but this is exactly what she wants to do. However, in this book we have a sect of murderous monks coming out to kill human and undead people in London. Greta has to use her unusual skills to stop this cult if she hopes to save her practice and her life. I thought this was really funny. It looks like I rated this 4 stars, and so this is actually a trilogy and I believe it's complete. The second book deals with, she has to go to Paris for a medical conference. Paris has an infestation of vampires, essentially, and so she has to, go into the catacombs and tunnels beneath the streets and stuff and deal with all these vampires. And then the third book, she has to go to a French spa to solve a dangerous medical mystery with mummies. So I feel like this is really, and it looks like I did rate all of these books 4 stars. So I feel like these are really perfect to read around Halloween because, you have a lot of the classic monsters, I guess, like vampires. I believe there are werewolves, if I'm remembering that right. Obviously mummies. I think there are some ghouls, perhaps. I could be wrong about that. Variety of fun classic creatures. And I just generally remember thinking Greta was very enjoyable as a main character. She's obviously very intelligent, and I liked how while she doesn't make the most amount of money being a doctor for these supernatural creatures, it's truly what she wants to do. She really wants to help these creatures live full lives and not have medical problems, which is I think that's really sweet of her. I thought it was also quite humorous. And we get a variety of interesting side characters, and we have different types of vampires here, which is pretty interesting. I like the more classic vampires, like Nosferatu type creatures, and they all have different weaknesses and things. So I think that this one, with this cults of these murderous monks, is kind of like a Jack the Ripper type vibe. The humor may not be for everybody. I think it's kind of more of this dry humor, but that works pretty well for me in general, so I thought it was funny. In general, I was obviously invested enough in the story to continue on and finish up the trilogy. I'm sure there were probably some lulls in pacing at times, but it's been a while since I've read these, so it's it's a little bit hard to remember. But all that being said, I think that this is an excellent series and definitely worth checking out. The next series that I'll talk about is the Encrypted series by Shauna McGuire, and the first book is Discount Armageddon. So this one is, I think, very loosely classified as doctors. In general, there is a family of cryptozoologists, and we kind of vary up who we follow based on the book. And one of the siblings that we follow is a veterinarian, so that's why I generally clumped it up in this group. This is a really fun urban fantasy series that I don't think I've heard anyone on BookTube talk about, and I'm desperately trying to get people to read this book or this series because it's really good. Discount Armageddon, we follow Verity Price, who is the oldest of the Price siblings, and generally this Price family has been studying monsters of the world and trying to protect them from the Covenant of St. George, who just wants to extinguish all supernatural creatures. Verity is a dancer, and she is trying to pursue a career in professional ballroom dance. The Covenant of St. George ends up coming to Manhattan, and she has to kind of juggle her professional aspirations, I guess, in terms of dancing with her family business of taking care of these cryptids. So we have this guy from the Covenant kind of introducing some issues, but we also have cryptids disappearing. So we have we also have strange lizard men appearing in the sewers, and there's some rumors of a dragon sleeping underneath the city. It's still an ongoing series, and I've read all of the ones that are out so far, and I think I've given them all 5 stars. The 10th book comes out, I think, next year in like February, something like that. So what's interesting here is, like I kind of mentioned, like we vary up who we follow. So like the first 2 books follow Verity, then the next 2 books follow Alex, who is this veterinarian guy. I think the 5th book goes back to Verity. 6 through 8 follow Annie, who is the youngest of the siblings, and then book 9 follows Sarah, who's one of their cousins. So we have a lot of, obviously, like really interesting creatures here. There's like obviously dragons. There's talking mice that like kind of worship this Price family. They're actually like really humorous and just like super adorable. There's like these cuckoos, which are almost like insect-like, but they are obsessed with math, which is really awesome. A variety of really cool creatures from around the world, which is awesome. And I mean, I personally think that Shauna McGuire's writing is like really excellent. Like I flew through all of these books, and there's a lot of like really humorous moments, I think. And I don't know, I'm hard pressed to say like who my favorite character to follow is. Like I really enjoy all of them, and I like how she switches up, you know, like who you follow based on which book it is, and just generally like this family is really interesting and awesome. So there's a lot of plot points dealing with this covenant because they're like definitely a problem and want to kill off cryptids from around the world. There's like roller derby plots, just like a variety of really fun stuff. I think that this might be my favorite Shauna McGuire series, and like that's hard to say because I do really like her October Day series, and you know, like I like some of her books writing under Mira Grant, but I feel like as a whole this series has been more like consistently solid than her other books. So yeah, definitely worth checking this out, I think. So now we get into 2 series about librarians, and the first series that I'll talk about is the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. So basically the premise here is that we have like alternate worlds, and we have this like library that wants to collect unique works of fiction from these different worlds. So perhaps, you know, in one world Shakespeare wrote a different play that like no other worlds have. So the library wants to collect that and store that. So basically we follow Irene, who is a librarian, and she goes with her assistant Kai to an alternative London to retrieve a dangerous book. However, once they get there, it's already been stolen. So basically, we've got a whole bunch of factions here trying to fight to the death to find this book. Then we also have sort of like Fae versus dragons. And so in worlds that are full of a lot of the Fae, it's more chaos based. And then in worlds that are more like full of dragons, those are much more logic based. So you have an interesting variety of levels of chaos versus these logic worlds. In particular, the world that we're in for this one is much more chaos infested. So we have a variety of supernatural creatures and unpredictable magic. I haven't caught up to the series. I think I'm 1 behind, and the book 7 comes out, I think, in December this year. I have really enjoyed this series, and it looks like I've given all of the books like 4 stars. One of those maybe a 4.5. I don't know. I'm just looking at the star ratings that I round up on Goodreads, and I'm too lazy to look at the actual review. The variety of worlds that you see is super cool, and like I mentioned, like the different like chaos versus logic, these dragons versus the Fae. The dragons and the Fae can't really get along together because their natures are like very much opposing each other. Second book deals with an alternate Venice where it's always like carnival, essentially. The third one is going to St. Petersburg to kind of restore order after they like have to flee a version of revolutionary France. Book 4 goes to 1920s New York during Prohibition era. Book 5 deals with some like peace talks, and they're in like 1890s Paris. And then book 6 I haven't read yet, but I think that's like, yeah, in the Caribbean somewhere. So I don't know. I think that this is really fantastic. And again, I think it's like sort of Irene, I find absolutely hilarious, but she does have more of a dry humor, I think, which will not appeal to everybody. So, you know, be aware of going into that. But I think she's really funny. These librarians are able to use like words as power, essentially. So it's like this supernatural power type thing, and it's really cool. You have to be like very precise with your word choice to like get things to cooperate, I guess. So it's really fun to see Irene use her like intelligence to come up with different ways to describe things and like, I don't know, get get stuff to happen. Obviously, like this whole premise of like this interdimensional library is awesome. I love that. We have these overall arcs, I think, with the books where there's some like rogue librarians and generally like, again, Fae versus the dragons. One of the recurring characters is this like Sherlock Holmes type character. So if you're looking for like books about books, like definitely check the series out. I don't feel like I have ever had issues with the pacing in these books. I do think the most recent one I read, which is The Mortal Word, may have had a couple of lulls in pacing, but like in general, I'm still like, you know, really invested in the series. I'll obviously keep going. The last series that I'll talk about today is the Hell's Library series by A.J. Hackwith, and the first book is The Library of the Unwritten. Now, I've only read this book. The second book, which is The Archive of the Forgotten, just came out, so I haven't had a chance to pick up a copy and read it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I rated this one 5 stars. So basically the premise here is that we have this Library of the Unwritten in Hell, and this is like basically books that are not finished by their authors end up going here. We follow Claire, who's the head librarian of this unwritten wing, and she mostly her job is mostly like repairing and organizing books, but you have to keep an eye on the restless stories that risk materializing as characters and escaping the library. So here we have a hero who escapes from his book and tries to find his author. So Claire has to track him down and capture him with her assistant, who is a former muse and also a demon. So basically, like, this quest to get this hero does not go well. So we have an angel who attacks them, convinced that they have this devil's Bible, and this Bible is like a really powerful weapon. So they're trying to find this book that has the power to reshape the boundaries between heaven, hell, and earth. So the second book kind of deals with some of the books leaking a strange ink, and this like has a lot of potential power, and there's a lot of like different factions, I think, trying to figure out what to do with it and, you know, figure out what the true nature is. There's some sort of like possible fundamental altering of the afterlife. This one, I think there's definitely like a lot of quests going on here. So if you're not into that type of storyline, this may not work for you, but I thought it was really enjoyable. They journey throughout a variety of really interesting places. I seem to remember there's like forgotten realms that they have to journey through, and like that some of those realms were, I think, my favorite parts of the book. There's just like a variety of really cool places that they go. Obviously, you know, this library setting is awesome, and I liked the premise of how you can have characters from books like materialize and interact with people. Obviously, we have demons and angels, which is pretty exciting. I really liked Claire as a character. She's pretty entertaining. She definitely, I think, is like follows the rules, but she very much cares for like her job and her like the things and people that she's in charge of. The interaction between her and her assistant Brevity, who is this muse, is like definitely entertaining. They're kind of opposites, but work they work pretty well together. In terms of the pacing, I'm pretty sure I just like absolutely flew through this. I don't think there were any lulls that I can really remember. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, and again, like if you are the type of person who enjoys this quest type storyline, I would definitely recommend this. So with that, those are the 4 series that I had to talk to you about today. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. And I don't know what to ask about a question of the day, so if you've made it this far, just leave a little book emoji or some sort of emoji. If you want to join my Discord, the link is in the description below, but I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.